A seismic shift in the campaigns for governor and lieutenant governor of Arkansas. Tonight, a special one-hour edition of Arkansas Week, and we'll hear from State Senator Jason Rapert, a candidate for lieutenant governor. The senator, as you're about to see, has a lot to say about the shifts in the primary for these statewide offices. Also, a special Good Root story about how Arkansas is leading the nation by far in a very important crop. Then, an update on the state of medical marijuana in Arkansas and the potential for that program. All that and more in this edition of Arkansas Week, starting right now.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.
And hello again, everyone, and thanks very much for joining us. Arkansas politics, especially Arkansas Republican politics, got another jolt at midweek. Attorney General Leslie Rutledge announced she was leaving the race for governor. She will instead seek her party's nomination for lieutenant governor. She becomes the second GOP candidate to abandon the gubernatorial primary for a different office. Months ago, the incumbent Lieutenant Governor, Tim Griffin, switched to the race for Attorney General, tacitly acknowledging the enormous lead held by Sarah Huckabee Sanders in both political polls and fundraising. Suddenly, the race to succeed Mr. Griffin is very crowded. Among the high-profile candidates, State Senator Jason Rapert, who joins us now. Senator, thank you very much for being with us. Before we get started, I should...
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. I would advise the audience that we, because of technical reasons, scheduling and holidays and the like, we are taping this broadcast at mid-morning on Wednesday. We do hope that General Rutledge will be able to join us within moments because she has, in fact, been invited. But let's begin by saying, Senator, how does this change the race?
It doesn't change anything for me, Steve. You know, I was the first candidate to announce for lieutenant governor, and I have been leading in the fundraising amongst all of the candidates, even though I haven't even been able to raise funds for about half the year, because when the Senate is in session, we are unable to raise funds. But the bottom line is we see the support out there for Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I believe that I make a perfect right arm to serve as lieutenant governor and to help Sarah make sure that we accomplish the goals of a new Republican administration in our state. And I find it very interesting, and I do not know how in the world someone would pose themselves to be lieutenant governor in this race when they have constantly undermined and took shots at Sarah Huckabee Sanders over the course of the last few months. We have even seen the new candidate that's entered this race say that they would find the job of lieutenant governor boring, and that after leading an office like the Attorney General's office, that they really would have no interest in serving as lieutenant governor. And as a matter of fact, Steve, a few months ago, the candidate that's just now entered the race called me up personally and said that the rumors that many had been putting out about her leaving the governor's race to enter the lieutenant governor's race were absolutely false. She called me personally and told me all of that. And so I understand politics is interesting, but it is sad when somebody calls up and gives you their word on something that they suddenly back up on that. The bottom line is that I have fought hard for the people of Arkansas. I've been elected 4 times popularly to my seat in the Arkansas Senate, and I am fully committed to working hard for the state of Arkansas, fighting hard for the individual liberties of our citizens, and I fully intend to be victorious in my race for lieutenant governor.
The barbs that she has aimed at Ms. Sanders, as you note, Senator, have, I must say, they've been fairly gentle. And in withdrawing from the race for governor yesterday, she was kind of, and even when she fired a barb or two, she was kind of complimentary. And she certainly endorsed her yesterday and was highly complimentary. So that doesn't exactly disqualify her, does it, from the Sanders point of view?
Well, there's a big difference. I have been a friend to the Huckabees. Governor Mike Huckabee actually has endorsed me for every single race that I've been in for the Arkansas Senate He also serves on my National Board of Advisors, which for the National Association of Christian Lawmakers,
Well,
which is an entity that we've put together for 14 months.
Ms. Rutledge works
and
for the
so
governor.
In terms of my positioning, Steve, and again, we may be having a delay here, my positioning in this race is that I have been a constant supporter of the Huckabee family and Sarah Huckabee Sanders in her race. And I have not been one that is stating that there's a difference between her and the candidate, which I have often heard the candidate refer to the fact that she is the one that knows how to pilot the plane. She's not a stewardess. So look, her words speak for themselves. They've been quoted in the paper, as you know. I believe that you need a lieutenant governor that can work well with the governor of the state of Arkansas. And I'm the one with experience in the Senate, one with legislative experience. I'm the one that passed off many of the pro-life bills that Leslie Rutledge goes out there and claims that she has some sort of ownership of. She defends the laws that we passed, but I fought the battles to get the heartbeat bill passed. I fought the battle to get the 10 Commandments on the Arkansas Capitol State grounds. And I'm the only legislator in the entire nation being sued by the American Atheists. That's because I fight for what is right, and I have never cowered from that. And so, hey, this is politics. There's a race, and I'm going to be a gentleman in the race, but I will speak the truth, and I will continue to fight hard and plan on being victorious for the race for lieutenant governor.
When the Arkansas Constitution was written, sir, its authors seemed to deliberately make it a, quote, boring office. Its only constitutional power is to preside over the Senate. So other than the bully pulpit, how can you use that office? Can anyone use that office to either support an incumbent governor or to pursue issues? Your powers are limited.
There are two duties. The two duties of the office of lieutenant governor is to preside over the Senate and to be a tie-breaking vote when it is necessary, and then obviously also to be ready to be governor on day one. I will tell you that the office of lieutenant governor might be boring to some until the point that it's not. Hence Jim Guy Tucker having to resign and leave office under a cloud, and Mike Huckabee becoming governor of this state. There are many instances over the years when we've had a transition in that way. I have made a commitment to the people of Arkansas that the same conservative leadership and the same fight that I've given to making Arkansas a Republican state, I will continue those in the office of lieutenant governor. My role will be to be a voice to continue the Republican ideals, the conservative leadership that we believe are taking our state in a good direction. And I've been a part of making this state a Republican state. And I believe that the support that we've been seeing is resonating with the citizens around this state. And I look forward to continuing that in this race and as lieutenant governor of the state of Arkansas.
It would seem, Senator, that you and the other five Republican candidates for the six of you and all for lieutenant governor share the same ideological space. Pretty much, you're all emphasizing the same issues. So again, what's going to separate you from from your five competitors? What sets you apart?
Well, number one, I'm the only one that's in this race that has been leading and a part of the majority since we took over in 2012. I was first elected in 2010, served in a minority position while the Democrats had their last 2 years of leadership in the legislature. So I have been a part of the actual group of Republican leaders that has won the support of the people of Arkansas and has been passing the bills that has been cutting taxes. None of the candidates that are currently in here has been a part of any of those decisions cutting taxes in Arkansas. I have. None of them in the current race right now have been a part of the decisions that have made this state the most pro-life state in America. I have been there. I have been there for those fights, and we've been victorious in them. And the people of Arkansas know that. I love all of my fellow Republicans, but I will absolutely make sure that the record is clear that there's one candidate that is well known for fighting these legislative battles and winning in the Arkansas legislature, and that's myself in this race. And we invite everybody to go to jasonrapert.com, become a volunteer, to donate and become a part of our campaign.
Will social issues, that has been, excuse me, Senator, your forte. You did mention fiscal policy, but you've stressed in your legislative career social issues session after session. Is that going to dominate this conversation, or will it get into issues such as, well, other issues? Fiscal, for example.
Well, there are many issues that are out there. I also was a strong voice during the last extended session that we just had to protect people from being fired from these onerous vaccine mandates. And that does separate me some from some of the folks that are running for office. They may have said they were against the Biden mandates, but they absolutely sold out the Arkansas people when it came to standing up for their own individual liberties to be able to use a medical exemption or a religious exemption if some employer just decides to try to mandate that upon them. We have freedoms and liberties in this country that are very important, and I have been a fighter for those things. As it relates to the social issues, I am the founder and president of the National Association of Christian Lawmakers, Steve. That group is just 14 months old. We've had 2 major national meetings, and I've got 26 individual elected officials that are state chairs of that organization with members and supporters in 49 states. I know how to build coalitions around the country and to get things done, and that has been a part of my legacy and my history in the Arkansas Senate. The people of Arkansas need a fighter right now. They need somebody that's proven when it comes to being a leader on policy and promoting ideas that can get popular support. I appreciate the records of many of the candidates and what they've done, but you're looking for a lieutenant governor that can preside over the Senate. And I'm the one with those relationships, and very happy that last night I got calls from several of those senators telling me to stay the course and to stay in this race, and I plan to do it.
How much do you plan on spending? Do you know? Could you give us an estimate of what this race is going to cost?
Well, races cost what they cost in the end. It so happens that if you look up the record, I am told that I have raised more for my legislative races than any other sitting legislator right now in the state of Arkansas. I've been proven that I can raise funds. I've not only raised those funds for my races and campaigns, I've raised funds to help with the NACL and the other efforts in putting up the Arkansas 10 Commandments Monument. I'm able to go get support for the causes that I'm involved in, including my own race, which I lead the fundraising out of all of the other candidates in this race. And I will go out and raise whatever is needed to be victorious in the race for lieutenant governor, just like I've always done in the past.
One of the signature issues of your tenure, Senator, has been abortion, which is now before the U.S. Supreme Court. And you have indicated that if at all possible, during a special legislative session, which Governor Hutchinson indicates he still wants, that you will pursue it in that special session. Are you sticking with that position?
Yes, sir. And there are 2 fundamental issues that I'm working on for the special session, and I've already communicated with Governor Hutchinson before this announcement that just happened, and we're planning to meet on the 23rd. And in that meeting, we plan to talk about 2 things. One is I proposed a full-time law enforcement officer tax credit for all full-time law enforcement officers in the state of Arkansas. The Sheriff's Association supports this. The Municipal Chiefs of Police Association supports this. The Association of Arkansas Counties supports this. And the State Police Foundation supports this. We're all working together so that we truly can fund law enforcement in our state. And the second part of that meeting will be about putting forth a bill that utilizes the Texas Civil Cause of Action. I passed the first heartbeat bill in the entire nation in 2013. The NACL, the organization that I just mentioned earlier, in 2021, in July of this year, we passed the first model bill using the Texas heartbeat bill and the Civil Cause of Action as the basis for that model. Now, in Arkansas, I was able to have help with leadership of Representative Mary Bentley, and we passed SB 6, which is the total abolishment of abortion in the state of Arkansas except to save the life of a mother. We intend to actually run SB 6, which is the bill which was the total abolishment of abortion, and add the Texas Civil Cause of Action. We're obviously waiting to see if the Supreme Court is going to take any action to put forth an injunction related to the Texas Civil Cause of Action. But if they do not, then it's a total green light for us. And the fact of the matter is, Each state has the ability to continue to pass pro-life legislation to let our voices come forth and be heard. I made a commitment to run pro-life legislation when I was first elected, and I will continue to seek to do that until the last opportunity to do so. And so you will see me filing a bill. We're already putting together our legislative sponsors. And I believe that if that special session is called, that whether the governor puts that on the session call or not, we will be able to get the 2/3 that we need to make Arkansas stand out once again as one of the strongest pro-life states in the entire country.
The governor has indicated, sir, that he would prefer that none of this, that it stays strictly on the matter of tax policy, and leave abortion for or social issues, other issues for another time. That would seem to put you, and if you can get there, 2/3 of the General Assembly at odds with Mr. Hutchinson. Correct? Is he wrong to take that posture?
Well, it would put us at odds if that's where he stays, and I try to always give room that people can make decisions. I think Governor Hutchinson sees, if you will, the future here. And one of the things he cited in postponing the legislative session was to see what the Supreme Court might say as it relates to the Texas bill. I think in the state of Arkansas, the people of this state have proven we want to continue to do our best to stop abortions in our state. I want to see Planned Parenthood clinics shut down. I want to see the Little Rock abortion facility completely shut down. There's been over 60 million babies killed in this nation since the 73 decision, and the state of Arkansas wants to see abortion abolished. I've said many times, Steve, that just as this nation abolished slavery, which was a crime against humanity, we should abolish abortion, which is also a crime against humanity. So I invite Governor Hutchinson to join me in the pro-life stance that he knows is paramount in the state of Arkansas. Let's put this on the call, and let's take another action which shows that Arkansas is serious about saving lives.
How wide is the gulf between Mr. Hutchinson and the Republican conference in the Senate and in the General Assembly as a whole? It seems to be substantial, Senator, and it seems to be growing. Is that correct?
Well, I think that you've called it right. There has been a divide there. The reasoning for that, you would have to ask him about that. But I've been consistent. I am a conservative Christian, and I have stood and filed bills that back up that position's stance. And I will tell you that in this legislature as well, Steve, I want to point something else out to you. We've got very strong Christian conservatives that are in office in our state, but we have some folks that say they're Republicans, but they fight us behind the scenes. I'm calling upon all of the churches in Arkansas, all of the pastors in Arkansas. This is a time where you need to stand up and get your people to go out and vote as they have never voted before. I also passed SJR 14, Steve, which is the Arkansas Religious Freedom Amendment. I worked with Representative Gazaway to do that. That's going to be on the ballot next year. That is the Arkansas Religious Freedom Amendment. And so I've got an open call to all churches and all pastors. You need to register your people to vote and vote as never before. The state of Arkansas only had a 55% turnout in the last presidential election. It was one of the lowest in the entire country. That's unacceptable. We've got great people in the state of Arkansas, and we need them to come out and let their voices be heard. And I believe not only will they vote for SJR 14, I think they also will support the total abolishment of abortion, and I believe they will support a candidate like myself who's been on the front line advocating for those very policies.
On the abortion issue, Senator, what say you to those who who have a different view, that this essentially is about a woman's autonomy over her own body, over her own reproductive health? Your response to that? And that the state has no business regulating that.
You see, if you had time to get deeply into the issue, you would find that they're misstating that. The body that they carry in their womb is a separate body from themselves. So once that baby is alive in a mother's womb, even in the state of Arkansas under criminal penalty, if a baby is killed in utero in a mother's womb, a person could be charged for the death of that child in a mother's womb, even though the mother survives. So We know that life is precious, and people like myself believe that life begins at conception. The Bible says in Proverbs chapter 6, 16 through 19, there's 6 things that he hates. Yea, 7 are an abomination, and one of those are hands that shed innocent blood. It is unacceptable in today's time that we allow babies to be killed when in Arkansas we have the safe haven baby box legislation, and just had a baby saved a few days ago in Maumelle that was turned over at a fire department in one of those safe haven baby boxes, which is legislation I supported. We do not have to kill the child to also allow the mother to make a decision that she doesn't want to keep the child. She can simply give the child over to the state of Arkansas, and we will find a home for that child. That's the humane answer. Abortion is a crime against humanity, and it should be abolished.
On the matter, sir, of medical freedom, as it is sometimes referred to, should that apply also to immunization, say for measles, mumps, diphtheria? Should parents be able to say, no, my child is not going to have that immunization?
Well, I will tell you that this is an issue, again, that requires a deeper dive into the discussion. Right now, you have an injection that is being forced on a large part of the population, which is not really that effective. We've seen this in the results that are coming out. It is not as effective as some of the other vaccines that have been put out there for public use to curb sickness and illness and disease. I've had many vaccine shots myself, but I will tell you that we should not force a population. For instance, I just talked with a couple in Northeast Arkansas. They called me for help because the woman worked for a hospital and she's pregnant, but she had lost 2 of her previous babies through miscarriage. Her doctor gave her a note and said, you should not take the vaccine until after you've delivered the baby. Steve, the hospital refused to honor the doctor's written instructions for that lady, and she was terminated. She was fired from her job because she was being forced to choose between taking the advice of her doctor or taking the advice of the Biden administration or an employer mandate that was being given to them. Our Declaration of Independence said that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberty and the pursuit of happiness, which is working and pursuing the job that you want to have happiness in your family. Those 2 things are under attack with the vaccine mandates. I stood up to fight for the people of Arkansas, and they know that, and there were many in our state who failed on that note. In fact, in the Senate, we were 2 votes shy of having the emergency clause to immediately protect people from these vaccine mandates. If they don't want a vaccine or an injection, they should not have to take it in this situation for sure, because it's unproven. So again, we want to make sure that we are following the science, and the science is telling us that this vaccine is not as effective as it was sold to the American people. This is why they're forcing people to take boosters in very short amount of times.
The scientists who are in the employ of the Hutchinson administration, sir, and the state, for example, the state health department, say it is highly effective, and at a minimum, it's the best vaccine we can do. And also, it's quite safe for pregnant women. So once again, you would seem to be strikingly at odds with Mr. Hutchinson.
I have been at the table. I had COVID. It's a dangerous situation. My grandfather died with COVID-19. I preached his funeral. My father just survived a COVID-19 bout. He was on a ventilator for over 30 days. I tell people all the time, it can be a very serious matter. But when we have evidence that's been presented to us, Steve, from doctors and from nurses that talk about side effects and people that have been harmed from this vaccine, don't even attempt to tell me that there is not danger involved in that. And shame on anyone that would hide and misstate some of the facts involved with this. I believe that we should be caring for people. We should not be forcing them to take something that even a doctor in some instances has told them they should not take. This is the proper course, not forcing people to take an injection when they have a valid religious exemption or a valid medical exemption. And as for Jose Romero, I stood on the floor of the Senate. There are many people that opposed him being confirmed as the leader of our Department of Health. I believe that we've got some Arkansas Dr. Fauci's that need to resign and go, just as we need Dr. Fauci to go at the national level.
Well, Mr. Hutchinson seems to, or Dr. Romero, for example, seems to have Mr. Hutchinson's full support. He has, in fact, said so. Is Mr. Hutchinson then in error? Is his judgment flawed in this matter?
As it relates to Dr. Romero, he knows. I actually stated on the Senate floor, I am sad that we still have Dr. Romero in his position because I have seen some of the bad judgments. When we have the Department of Health calling up churches in the state of Arkansas and threatening to shut them down because they were singing in their churches, that falls on the leadership of the Department of Health under the leadership of Dr. Romero. When there were edicts that were coming out back, this was last year, where he was chastising people that might be using off-label medications, you remember that came to a head. I have had calls from people that went to their pharmacies and their prescriptions were refused to be filled at their pharmacies. And those people would then cite some of the communications that's come out from Dr. Romero. I actually believe that we'd be better served by someone else in that leadership role because of the fact of the confusion and the misstatements that we've seen come out over the last couple of years. The bottom line for me is that with all this confusion, Steve, we need to honor people's liberty and their individual choice as it relates to the injections related to COVID-19.
Running short of time here, but Senator, let me ask the matter of liberty. Opponents of your positions say that is tantamount to granting people the liberty to infect other people. With about a minute remaining, I'll let you respond to that. Your position.
That's ridiculous. And if vaccines are totally effective, then why are the vaccinated scared of the unvaccinated? It's a totally ridiculous argument. The bottom line is this nation has been under a spell of all of these things for the last couple of years. They've shut down people's businesses. They've threatened people to take their jobs away from them because they don't want to take an injection that has been proven, regardless of what might be stated by anyone. There's proof that it has not been as effective as sold. They said that you could quit wearing your mask when you take a vaccination. Guess what? You couldn't. The American people know that we have been literally sold a complete sham in terms of the response to COVID-19.
Senator,
I want us to have an approach that honors individual liberty, and I stood and fought for that on the floor of the Arkansas Senate.
Senator, I wish we could continue, but we are simply out of time, and we thank you very much for yours. Come back soon.
Thank you for having me on.
It isn't Arkansas's largest in terms of acreage, but it is profoundly important to our economy, and perhaps even to American foreign policy. Here's this month's Good Roots Report.
Another rice harvest has come to a close in Arkansas. On this next episode of Good Roots, we'll explore its history, the economic impact, and its golden future.
And that's brown rice right there.
Okay, and that's long grain, huh?
Yes, sir.
This is the first long grain rice sale to China anywhere in southeastern United States. But we're delighted that that market was open in a family farm in Atkins, Arkansas.
To meet you.
Our initial shipment was to Northwest China. It was in July. It's about a 45-day venture.
The rice industry has been working on getting access to China for a long time, and now we've done it, and the Rawsons have done it. We're here to celebrate with them and make that announcement with the governor.
Look at that. Marketing Arkansas right there. I like that.
It's a big deal for us. I think it's a big deal for Arkansas. Hopefully it'll start that process where other farmers and rice mills can follow behind. When you start putting an entire crop into 24-ounce packages, it takes a lot of distribution to move that through. So we'll take all we can get.
This recent announcement from the Ralstons is just one more big step for Arkansas rice. But it got us to thinking, where did it all start? We're here at the Museum of the Arkansas Grand Prairie to learn more. So Gina, there is a lot to see here at the museum, but today we're here to talk about rice. How did rice even get to Arkansas?
Well, we have stories of rice actually being part of Arkansas before it was part of Stuttgart. There's evidence of a Native American woman having rice on a steamship going down the White River. In Crockett's Bluff, you can see pictures of barges loaded with rice going to the Mississippi River to go to New Orleans to be milled. But that was not a significant presence in the agricultural dynamics of Arkansas at all until rice came to Stuttgart. Rice came to Stuttgart because of some hunting trips in Louisiana where rice had been a staple for many, many years. And people thought, you know what, this is very much like we have at home. You know, if we just study what is happening in Louisiana, it'll translate really well to what our farm can do, and that's how it got here. Behind us, we have got pictures of some of the people that were involved in that first effort. Mr. Fuller, Mr. Morris, brother-in-laws, Mr. Hope. The rice seed in this vial right here is part of the first rice grown in the Grand Prairie. The rice seeds were purchased from a man named Elias Moses, who was born in slavery in South Carolina. He moved post-war to Arkansas, and he brought rice with him. That's Carolina Gold. That's the variety of rice. This exhibit talks about how much rice that it takes to raise 65 million gallons of water to raise 100 acres of rice. Rice does require a flood. Now we're able to use a much more shallow flood, and the growing season is so much shorter that you don't have to use as many floods a season to get a successful rice crop. And there's so many steps being made right now all over this community to reduce the use of water. Certainly it is very important to us in an agricultural community.
So this photo mural says Day of Delivery. Tell us what's going on here.
Well, we all still gather at the mill. Right now you're seeing people bring their rice in bags on wagons pulled by horses and mules, but you'll see here the railroad is coming through, and so this is how the mill was working. Now, it wasn't long and farmers began to gather their resources and the Rice Growers Association. So they are cooperative efforts, and so farmers are working together to have a milling process that is to their advantage.
I'm Kelly Robbins. I'm the Executive Director of the Arkansas Rice Federation, and we're a nonprofit trade association that represents all facets and aspects of our state's rice community. Two of the primary markets for Arkansas rice is going to be Mexico and Haiti. Our national group, USA Rice, helps promote rice in up to 25 countries. There's well over 2,000 Arkansas rice farms. 96% of them are family owned and operated. Each of those rice farms have about $1 million economic impact on their local communities and produce about 200 million bushels of rice each year. That's about 9 billion pounds of rice. Farm sale receipts for the actual rice itself is about $1 billion a year. The economic impact from those sales, anywhere from $4 to $6 billion a year that it makes an impact on our state's economy here.
Science and technology have been the driving force for the success here in the state. The Whitakers, down just south of Dumas, are a prime example of those taking advantage of these advancements.
My name's Jim Whitaker. I'm a farmer in southeast Arkansas, farmer with my brother Sam. Our family's been here since the middle of 1800s, and the technology has evolved over time. Our rice is zero grade. That means our fields are perfectly flat. They've been precision leveled. This helps us reduce water use by about 50%. Cloud-based technology, all our tractors are linked to the cloud, so we can sit on the iPad and monitor them. We can analyze their efficiencies, see what they're doing every day, how many acres they cover, the bushels per hour. So this field here that we're standing in is fully automated. There's a sensor that measures water depth. When we get to a low water mark, it turns the well on, move water from field to field through the gates. That is all hands-free, cloud-based, monitoring the field 24 hours a day.
Before technology, we didn't realize some of our inefficiencies and some of the resources we were wasting. With rice, especially, rice is usually harvested at higher moisture. In the computer there, it's reading temperature and moisture throughout the bin. So it'll give us a 3D picture of, we can see if we're getting a hot spot, if we got some places we're not able to get the moisture out of. We added a solar system here, and it's pretty well taking care of the energy needs for this facility right here. You know, in order to be sustainable, we've got to maximize all that. We've got to be real efficient with what we're doing, and real mindful of those resources.
There are more than 2,000 Arkansas rice farms, and more than 90% of those farms are family-owned and operated. This museum is a great place to learn more about its history. The long and the short of it, the easiest way to show your support is to eat more rice. For Good Roots, I'm Lauren McCullough.
Major funding for Good Roots is provided by Arkansas Farm Bureau.
Arkansas Farm Bureau, advocating the interests of Arkansas's largest industry for more than 80 years. Arkansas counts on agriculture. Agriculture counts on Farm Bureau.
Back in the studio now, and who better to pick up the story with than our Secretary of Agriculture, Wes Ward. Mr. Secretary, as always, thanks for coming on our air. Thanks for making yourself available. We saw you in that piece just a moment out in the field, so let me kind of follow up on that a little bit. From the standpoint of R&D, can you tell us what's going on now in terms of ag research, specifically rice research, that can both improve yields and be more environmentally sustainable?
Sure, yeah. I would say a lot, actually. I think both the Ralstons and the Whitakers are great examples of the industry and great partners with the Rice Federation and Farm Bureau and so many Ag Council, others that are involved in making the industry as productive as it possibly can be. And so every aspect of the industry, the rice industry included, every aspect of that is looked at. Ultimately, when a producer's making decisions, every dollar spent, is looking towards making that crop as high quality as they can. So rice in particular, rice uses a lot of water, so there's a lot of efforts on looking at things like alternative wetting and drying, how much water needs to be used, conserving that water, different varieties of rice itself that are being looked at to increase yield. So really across the board, technology, genetics, water use, you name it, it's all on the table. And every year, producers in the industry are finding ways to make it better, more effective, more efficient, more sustainable, higher quality for the consumer of that product.
Well, one could hardly fail to be struck, I think, by the technology at work that we saw in the Whitaker operation. But we've got hundreds, literally more than almost 2,000, I believe, rice-producing farms in the state. How widespread is that tech? How common is that tech?
Very common. I think that's where the industry does a good job of sharing information. So, and the corollary, the supportive industries that support agriculture and rice production itself. So I think just about every farmer is looking at technologies to incorporate and implement that. And I think that's really, as you see a smaller number of producers involved in agriculture, but you see a larger number of people that are in the support aspect of agriculture. So we think agriculture is incredibly important. It's the state's largest industry, but there's a very broad array of careers in agriculture for people to be involved on the technology side, on the conservation side, the sustainability side, the production side, whether it's a grain bin or GPS or water tracking, water quality, those sort of things. There's a broad range of things and factors that are involved, and all to help the producer provide that product. And we're excited about advances in the industry and what it does for our state and for our nation as a whole.
Well, maybe this is coming from the genetic side. Is there any hope, any indication at all? Everyone knows that rice is a very water-intensive crop, even under the best of conservation circumstances. Any research being done that could come up with a species, a variety, that actually requires less water? Anything being done in that regard?
Sure. I think everybody's looking at that. Different, how much water is needed for particular varieties. In Arkansas, we do obviously use a lot of water, and so it's not just the varieties, but also where the water comes from. And so, Historically, we've used a lot of groundwater to provide that for the rice industry and for those fields and agriculture as a whole. And so it's also looking at, how do we shift from groundwater to surface water? So Arkansas is a water-rich state, and so how do we make sure we capture that in the best way where we're not depleting an aquifer, we're not, having an impact on, aquifer sustainability into the long run. And so really everything's on the table, and the whole industry, the whole state's looking at that to make it as efficient and sustainable as possible.
Well, we were just discussing in that piece the as was announced earlier this week, the sale of some long grain to China. Asian markets are a little different than Occidental markets sometimes, in that Asian tastes are markedly different. Do you see other opportunities or just a continuation of an expansion of the trade that we have now in terms of ag?
Yeah, I think you hit on a great point earlier about just the relationship with trade in general. So it's often, and most often, almost always about just agricultural trade. There are other issues involved, from country to country as you're trying to expand those opportunities. And, I think, people have been working on getting access to the China market for rice for several years. And, in the Rawsons, as was mentioned in that video, was the first long grain rice to go to China. So we're excited about that. We do think, rice is an incredibly important commodity in China. They have a very large population, over 1 billion people in China. So, USDA is expecting that will be over 300 million a year for rice. And so we think there's obviously a lot of room for growth there, as it's very, very new, and we hope that will be able to continue. But it's countries like China, but it's also South American countries where a lot of rice is going currently across the globe. I eat rice several times a week. I know a lot of people in Arkansas do as well. But it's across the globe, rice is a staple commodity, and we want to make sure that when people are thinking about that and thinking about their food choices, and that they're thinking about and rice. And the governor does an incredible job of talking about rice just about everywhere he goes. He's in the Middle East and Israel. He's across the globe talking about agriculture and talking about our state. And every time he goes somewhere, he's talking about their agriculture, and rice is always an important topic for him.
Well, along those lines now, many factors can influence, obviously, overseas sales, exports and imports. For example, Taiwan. The tensions between the U.S. and China are especially high at the moment, and they seem destined to get higher. How concerned are you, or are you concerned that particular hotspot could affect the commerce?
Sure, it certainly could, and you're absolutely right. There's certainly tensions there. There's tensions across the board when it comes to China and some of the things that have been going on there. One, we want to make sure that trade is fair, and one of the big issues has been intellectual property theft and not meeting commitments, and so those are always factors in those considerations as we're talking about trading relationships. But Taiwan is important, and we try very hard to make sure people have to eat. We want to make sure people have access to good, high quality food products, and try to make agriculture products not as political, but they get pulled in that category as well. But that's certainly a consideration that impacts trading relationships. It's never as simple as just, hey, we want rice, we want to buy rice. It's what are the other country agreements and other things that go into phytosanitary agreements, a broad range of factors that impact an actual sale of a commodity. So for the Rawsons in particular, to be able to get that sale across the finish line is a significant accomplishment.
Well, your boss, Mr. Hutchinson, Governor Hutchinson, is I think he's returning about now from, anyway, he's been spending some time in Israel in the past several days, and maybe some other stops, I think, in the Middle East. What's going to come of that? What do you anticipate?
Yeah, so
go ahead and steal Mr. Hutchinson's thunder if you want to.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he'll get on for sure, but so many things that Arkansas does is important across the globe. And I know he's talking about computer science and technology and missile defense, broad range of factors that are important in our relationship between Arkansas and Israel. But as I mentioned, everywhere that the governor goes, he talks about agriculture. Every trip, no question about it. He's going to bring up our agriculture industry as our largest industry and talk about that. And, while it may not be a sale of rice, we're always looking for those relationships where maybe it's poultry, maybe it's another product. And so that would be a staple product that another country might like and might enjoy, and the governor always tries to advocate and bring those up when he's traveling abroad.
Mr. Secretary, I got to end it there because we are simply out of time. Once again, we thank you for yours. Come back soon. It's been 5 years now since Arkansas voted to legalize medical marijuana, and 2.5 years since sales began. By year's end, the 80,000 or so Arkansans who are clinically authorized will have spent almost $500 million to purchase cannabis from the state's 36 or so licensed dispensaries. We call them dispensaries. And the taxes on those transactions will almost certainly reach $60 million. So, a half-decade into the program, a review. Joining us, Scott Hardin of the Arkansas Medical Marijuana Commission. Mr. Hardin, that's an awesome. Thank you for coming in, by the way.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
And of course, you're an offshoot of the Department of Finance and
Right.
Administration.
Right.
The system now, in terms of the what the law authorizes, the amendment authorizes in terms of dispensaries, would seem to be operating at near capacity. You have what, one or two?
Two left. Two
licensees left.
That's right. That's right. So as of today, when Arkansans went to the polls in November of 2016 and said, yes, we want medical marijuana, within that proposal, it allowed for 40 dispensaries maximum. As of today, they've issued 38 of those. 37 of the 38 are in operation. And we think those last 2 licenses will go out the door probably in early January. Those will be in Southwest Arkansas. And that really has been one point of contention, that number of dispensaries. Because everyone naturally looks across the border to Oklahoma and sees thousands of dispensaries and says, well, what in the world are we doing in Arkansas when we have thousands across the border and we only have 40? Please do better, get more. So we are constantly telling patients and people, unfortunately, this is where we are. We're locked in unless voters go back to the polls and change that.
It would literally take an amendment.
We think so. There is also a conversation, could the legislature potentially go in and alter that amendment? So that might be another option. So one of those paths, but and who knows where we're going from here, but I think at least that could be a conversation.
Well, the political aspect of it, of course, belongs to the General Assembly and not the department itself per se.
Right.
But do you sense pressure building for a significant expansion?
I do to some degree, and one thing that we consistently hear is, I wish there was a dispensary a little closer. And I think that's when the number of patients grew fairly significantly over the last couple of years, because we continue to hear, I want a card, but I'm not going to get a patient card until there's a dispensary within 30 minutes or 45 minutes of my home. Obviously, people didn't want to drive 2 hours to the nearest dispensary. So as of now, there are, you look at Little Rock, we have 7 within about a 30-mile radius. So there are certainly choices in certain parts of the state. But I think that conversation or request that we need more is not going away.
By the same token, do you see, has opposition to it diminished?
It really has. To
the issue of not necessarily an expansion of the number of dispensaries, but to the concept of medical marijuana itself.
It really has. It's been interesting. Arkansans approved medical marijuana in November 2016. They approved casino gambling a couple of years later in late 2018. And what's been interesting, DFA has helped implement both of those programs. But as far as the pushback or the opposition to medical marijuana, if it's out there, we don't see it. There are pockets here and there. Every once in a while, we'll get a letter from someone that says, I don't want a dispensary in my community or near me. But with the exception of that, it has been oddly quiet. We haven't had any major issues, no major, these dispensaries, we've had violations issued due to small items, but we haven't had any major issues that would result in revocation or anything else of that nature. So really it has been quiet, and yeah, I think it's safe to say that if the opposition's out there, it's not very loud at this point.
Why the delay, or is there a particular reason for the delay in Southwest, or for the time lag in Southwest?
Right. They kept looking at the number of patients. We have a county map that shows the number of patients in each county, in each zone, and so the members of the commission just said, we don't think we're quite there, and we don't think it's quite justified to issue those 2 remaining licenses. But if you look at it now, the number in Southwest Arkansas, it justifies the 2 remaining dispensaries.
So there's a threshold in terms of patient authorization.
Yes, it's not an official number. It's really more discretionary, but in looking at that, you can look across the state and say, well, we've issued the other 38. Why not go ahead and get the other 2 out the door?
Are you satisfied that the agency has done, all the appropriate agencies involved, have done as good a job as possible at enforcing the rules and regulations that were set forth?
I think so. If you look at, from our perspective, from DFA, we have ABC under us. Well, the ABC enforcement agents are now overseeing alcohol, tobacco, and medical marijuana. So these agents are, you could call them super agents to some degree, because they're overseeing so many different aspects of enforcement in Arkansas. But I think they have learned a lot about the program since it passed back in 2016. They jumped right into the middle of it, and now we have a team of about 20 agents that are so well versed in medical marijuana. They can tell you exactly, walk into a dispensary and they can spot if something's off, they can spot it. We have this seed to sale tracking system, so we know exactly how much is in stock, how much has been sold, and we can compare that against their records and our records when we go check it out.
Any surprise on your part, the agency's part, in terms of volume of sales?
Yes.
Or revenue?
I think so. If you look at, again, going back to 2016 when this passed, we looked at, made a couple of guesses and looked at other states that had medical marijuana programs and said, well, maybe when we have 50,000 patients, I think we could consider that a mature medical marijuana market. Well, today we're at 80,000, so obviously that was an estimate that was a bit low. Revenue, again, as you mentioned, we've generated about $50 million between the 2 state level taxes. And I think it's safe to say that exceeds our expectations also. So overall, I think the level of interest in the program from patients, from media, from citizens, just overall, just the curiosity and engagement has surprised all of us. Any concern, of course,
Your rules and regulations are your agency's forte and responsibility. The impulse to abuse is not necessarily at all yours.
Right.
But is there official agency concern that this thing may get out of hand?
Not now. This is, again, looking at Oklahoma versus Arkansas. I think it's safe to say we have probably the most tightly controlled, most regulated program, medical marijuana program in the country. And then again, you look across at Oklahoma, I would argue you couldn't have 2 programs that differ any more than these 2. So know that there are so many controls in place. Again, every patient can buy up to 2.5 ounces every 14 days. Once you hit that 2.5 ounces, you're maxed out. I don't think any dispensary would gamble with doing anything that would potentially jeopardize that license. So as of now, it really has. We've not received any, from a law enforcement perspective, any complaints regarding the product getting into the wrong hands. So far, so good.
You said, I think earlier in the program, in the interview, you said the infractions reported thus far have been minor.
Yes.
For example.
Yes. Yeah, it really minor. So if you look, edibles, you can have edibles. Dispensaries can sell edibles, but they can't be in the form of a candy, a cookie, a brownie, really anything that would appeal to a child. So with that, you can't have anything even remotely on your store that would indicate, hey, this is appealing to children. So for instance, one dispensary had a sticker on a window. I believe it was a superhero, a Batman, a Spider-Man. That in itself was a violation. So again, nothing major. There have been some that a little more serious than that. But as far as getting to the level of revocation, we haven't gotten there.
Scott Hardin of the Department of Finance and Administration and Marijuana Commission, thank you very much for coming in.
Great to be here.
Come back soon.
Will do.
And that's it for us for this week. See you next week.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.